My name is Davion Fleming, Director of Admissions at Lick-Wilmerding High School. So excited to have you all with us this morning. We have a lineup of teachers to talk to you a bit today about their respective crafts, and then we'll end the day with a student panel. If you have questions for the folks who are presenting today, feel free to put them in the Q&A section of your bottom bar, and then we'll be sure to try to get to some of those as best as we can. But before we get started, we'll have some of our admissions teams members introduce themselves, and I'll pass it over to Andrew.
Thanks, Davion, and good morning to everyone else. Thanks for joining us here this morning. I'm really excited for you all to hear from our community members. But like Davion said, my name is Andrew. Andrew Manansala. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions. I'm also an alum, so I graduated in 2009. And I will pass off the mic to Deja.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Deja Haley. I work in the admissions office. I'm very excited to be on Zoom with you guys this Sunday, rainy Sunday morning. And I hope you enjoy what our teachers will be presenting to you today. And I'll be passing it back to Davion.
Awesome. Thanks. So our other two team members, Gabby and Elizabeth, they say hello from afar. And yeah, we're really looking forward to meeting you and learning more about your family as we go along in the season. And so first we have the privilege of hearing from Diana Suárez-Vargas to talk a little bit about body-mind education here at Lick-Wilmerding, which is a pillar piece in our students' curriculum and their experience. And so she's going to talk to you a bit about that. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A and we'll be sure to get to them. Thanks.
All right, everyone, good morning. I hope everyone's doing great. My name is Diana Suárez-Vargas. My pronouns are she, her, ella. I'm really excited to be here this morning. And, you know, I was doing great until I started seeing the number of people. We're almost at 400, so I'm feeling a little nervous. But I'm going to start showing a little bit of what body-mind education is. So you are probably asking yourself, what is BME? Because a lot of the times we talk about body-mind education at Lick, and people are kind of wondering, what is it that we do? So here are a few things that I'm gonna just kind of go through really quickly, just an overview of the program. Do not forget to breathe reminder, and then an intro to our program, and then I'm gonna go into a Q&A. So everybody take a deep breath. Let's breathe with the donut, expand your lungs, and then contract your lungs as you exhale. So take a moment if you want to use your hands, breathe in, and then breathe out. All right, wonderful. Thank you for breathing with me and with the donut. So let's not forget to breathe. That's something that's very important that we do a lot with our students. So body-mind education, it's a program that combines different disciplines. We combine climbing, we combine yoga, we combine health and wellness, and we have recently added in the past 4 years, 1 semester of human sexuality course for the 10th graders. So what you would normally find in other schools as physical education, we have actually integrated not just physical education, but it's called body-mind education. So we work with different programs. So one of them being climbing and another one being yoga, which are 2 non-competitive active, I will call them quote unquote sports, right? Like, I mean, climbing is a sport. That are, you know, that teach students a lot of different things like trust and developing a sense of self and a connection with their own bodies. It's not just about competition. It's more about how they connect themselves with, you know, what's going on within themselves. And so we do talk a lot about, in our health and wellness portion, we talk about like the importance of the self, you know, self-care, teaching them strategies on sleep, etc. Like a lot of different things that I'm going to go into in a moment. So my name is Diana Suárez-Vargas, and I'm one of the 3 members of the Body Mind Education Program. I'm originally from Colombia, but next year will be my 20-year anniversary in the Bay Area. I have been teaching yoga around the world for about 12 years. I have a 800 yoga teacher certification, and I'm also an active member of the American Association of Sexuality Educators and Counselors. And I'm also a parent of a sweet 9-year-old who's also a yogi. So I just wanted to share a little bit about me. So our health and wellness is for the 9th grade, it's once per rotation. So we really focus on identity development and expression. We always give a survey to the students, and then we talk about like, okay, what is some of the most important things that we want to hear from you? What do you want to learn? And they always talk about sleep. They need to learn how to sleep better. They want to manage their time better. We talk about nutrition. We talk about healthy relationships, adolescent brain development, healthy risk taking, and then we finish the year with drug and alcohol education. For our 10th graders, we talk about consent, relationships, healthy relationships, identity, self. It's a comprehensive and inclusive sexuality education. We talk about gender identity, sexual orientation, and then we go a little bit more into in-depth, kind of like in all the themes of how, you know, sexuality relates to a lot of issues that we see happening around the world. In terms of climbing, so for the fall, usually students work on team building and trust activities, gear awareness, tying knots, safety checkpoints, climbing, commands, basic climbing techniques, solid belay skills. And in the spring, they go into a more complex, it's a year-long course. They do stemming, high stepping, bouldering, rappelling, injury prevention, and environmental awareness. So if I'm sure with your virtual tour, you probably have already seen the awesome climbing wall that we have. And so students really have a lot of fun, and they learn how to trust each other, how to trust themselves, how to trust their bodies. Now, in terms of yoga, we do twice weekly sessions, sometimes 3 times a week. We work on postural awareness, strength, mobility, flexibility, agility. We work on relaxation and breath work because students feel like there is just so much going on, like they just feel very overwhelmed. So sometimes they come in, we do restorative yoga, we practice, you know, breathing. You know, nobody teaches us how to breathe, but if you think about it in the scale of importance, you can live about 3 days without food. You cannot live more than 2 minutes without breathing. So really learning how to breathe is so important for us. And then a lot of these tools help them, you know, focus, do better in tests, just perform overall. You know, we just kind of want to focus on their overall wellness. And then we provide a lot of tools like yoga props and balls, and, you know, we do a lot of fun things like yoga bottles with noodles and pool noodles and things like that. So it's a lot of fun. And then, you know, we ask students that, you know, they bring comfortable clothing, they lean into discomfort, that they listen to their bodies. It's very important for them to listen to their bodies, and also to be safe in all of the different, you know, options that we offer. And last but not least, I'm open for the Q&A. I know that I kind of try to like talk very fast because I wanted to make sure that I got everything across, but I know that there might be a lot of questions. So if you do have any questions for me, please feel free to write them in the chat. Any further questions that you have about the BME program, I am open to answer any questions. So one important thing, BME, we only are with a 9th and 10th graders, and then for 11th and 12th grade, they do still get a lot of things that we kind of touch in the curriculum for 9th and 10th grade, but they do it as team meeting or class meetings or special workshops, right? So they're asking me, how helpful is this for students? We every year we do, or every semester we do a lot of questionnaires, you know, to ask students how is this helping you, you know, and they always say they love yoga. They always walk through the yoga room and they miss it. You know, they have the opportunity to have a climbing club. So they do get to practice climbing beyond their 9th grade experience. So they do get to do that. So how often do they do rock climbing? So the way it is divided is students do 1/4 of yoga, and then other students do a quarter in the semester of climbing, and then they switch. So they get to do it twice. So it ends up being a whole semester, but divided into two sections, which answers also how long is this session. So it's 2 quarters, right? It's a year long, but it's 4 quarters, and then they switch every other quarter. And then the health and wellness is year long. How specifically do you see the body mindfulness program benefited high achieving students who are prone to stress? Yeah, well, so this is a great question, because they actually have been able to find a lot of resilience and a lot of, like understanding how their bodies work. And then stress produces, a cocktail of hormones, and then they cannot breathe, they cannot self-regulate. So they learn how to self-regulate, they learn how to take tests better, once they're aware of their bodies, and how they're aware of like, that they need brain breaks, that they learn how to manage their time better, they learn how to sleep better, and all of those things combined help them achieve better, their academic grades, right? Is this an addition to regular physical education classes, or instead of them? Instead of them. So at Lick, we don't have regular physical education, but we have a pretty extensive athletics department where all students can participate in that. Is BME the equivalent of health class at Lick? Yeah, so it's an equivalent. So it's a combination, right? It's body, mind, education. So it is physical education, it is health class, it is all together into one. How many hours a week the 9th and 3rd graders have classes? So yeah, per week. So they will have, Lick works in an 8th week rotation. And so they usually have it every other day. As far as the schedule that we have right now, they will have it every other day. They would usually have 3 movement sessions and 1 health and wellness session. As day 1 is usually our rotation for health and wellness. For the students that don't do sports, are there classes, or is this a place for students to work out? Oh, I'm not sure I understand the question, Debian. Do you want to take that question? For students who don't do sports, are there classes, or is there a place for students to work out?
Yeah, so the question is, students who may not want to participate in athletics, what are some options for them to using some of the facilities around the school? So are they, and so some folks are asking, can they use the climbing wall? Can they use like our gym, et cetera? Yes, the folks can use it recreationally. I think we just have to make sure that there's an adult present to make sure that folks are being safe. So yes, folks are able to do that. Deanna, I have a question for you actually. Can you just share with folks the most recent unit your class did on consent? You and I were talking about it over lunch, and I think it really kind of exemplified what teaching and learning looks like at Lick, and I think it will be a really great thing to share.
Yeah, well, we are doing a project which is not, and I can actually remove my stop. Can you stop sharing my screen? Oh, I can stop sharing my screen there. So we actually just finished a program. We're starting the unit on consent, but we're just having conversations actually with Andrew and Devion about like how COVID really has brought into the light the talk about boundaries, right? And then it has brought this conversation that normally tends to be just about sexuality into a light, a broader light. where we talk about, you know, like how we are asking actually for consent. Is it okay that I hug you, or can I shake your hand, or, you know, just a lot of questions like this that we are finally beginning to ask, which are conversations that should always have happened, but we just don't have these conversations. So what our students are doing is they are doing a public purpose program project, a PPP project, where they are interviewing people in the community to ask them how they see consent, how do they view consent on their daily lives, and then just to check responses. And then from there, they are developing a really beautiful campaign on how to, you know, they're using like social media strategies to develop a campaign on how we can ask for boundaries to be respected in and out of the classroom, and not just to have these conversations not only in the context of sexuality, but also in the context of like every day-to-day basis, and how that is really helping students then normalize conversations when it comes to talking about sexuality and talking about you know, consent in regards to sexuality. So yeah, that's what the students are doing, and they're really excited about this program. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Can you answer one more question that I'm seeing in here? And I think it's really great question from Amber Rosenberg. So what, if anything, have you noticed from like juniors and seniors in terms of how they're continuing to use the tools that they've learned in BME? So once they're no longer taking the course, how are they integrating that into their everyday lives? What have you noticed as a teacher for the juniors and seniors?
We always get so many students who want to TA our classes, and that is a great, you know, like not only that, you know, they're just so invested, they love it, they really like it, and they want to come back to it, right? And they always come back to us to tell us, you know, like, you know what, I practiced this breathing thing and I had this big test, and it was really great that I was able to, you know, remember that like if I breathe, then my brain is not in survival mode, and then I can actually, you know, practice a little bit more of like that being present with my body. So like once you learn tools about, you know, being present with yourself, how you take care of yourself, like how it's your responsibility to take care of yourself, those really stick with you. And we do see students who have high anxiety, you know, high stress, you know, using these techniques to be able to, you know, self-regulate. We also want to activate a program that we do, Mindful Mondays, where every student, you know, from every classroom can come into just a space during lunch where they can come and just take a brain break, take a moment, take a pause, take, you know, like understand that, like, you know, we live in a high achieving world that, you know, can be very demanding, and then how they can just kind of sit back and understand that if they're not taking care of themselves, if they're not taking care of the machine, they're not going to be able to continue to perform. So we do see multiple students. I mean, that this could be a question that you can ask the panelists that like themselves, but we do see a lot of students being really grateful for what they learned during their years at BME.
Awesome. Thanks, Deanna. I really appreciate your time this morning and sharing everything that you're doing in the classroom with our students and the long-term benefits that they're having, including just self-advocacy, more mindfulness in their junior and senior years as well.
And I know there are a lot of questions that didn't get to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just come off and then just type the answers to, if you felt like I didn't get to answer your question, I'm just going to stay a little bit and answer your questions. Thank you, everybody. Nice to meet you.
Awesome. So now we're going to move right along here and transition to talking a little bit about science with Don Rizzi. Hey, Don, good morning.
Hey, good morning, folks. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. And let's see. Hold on. Let me just try to do that one more time. I just want to make sure I got. Yeah. All right. So my name is Don Rizzi. I am in the science department. I'm also the chair of the science department. I also am the coordinator for our blended learning program, which I'm going to mention a little bit about during this presentation as well. So I've been here for about 13 years, and I've been lucky enough to be part of this this crew of very dedicated, passionate science educators. At Lick-Wilmerding, and like many science programs around the country, we've obviously recognized that science is much more than vocabulary words or a collection of facts. And we really focus on the process of science. Experimental design is something that students will, kind of partake in really from their first year through their senior year. Overall, our goal is really to educate students so they can, be informed citizens. Certainly, we have plenty of students here that also go on to pursue science in their professional lives. In this program, currently, we have biology being kind of the entry-level course that we use as a way to, kind of ground the program in, identifying, who we are kind of biologically. And it also kind of gives us a platform to kind of look at some of the other kind of social and environmental issues of our time, things like environmental justice, climate change. So as we all know, there's no shortage of issues that we could look at, but biology really is kind of the springboard that kind of sets the stage for all of the other classes. And as you can see here, we have chemistry in our sophomore year. And then after that, it's electives. So they can choose any of our elective courses as juniors and seniors. Some of them are honors courses. Some of them are lab courses. And some of them are, kind of like, I might call them boutique courses that you don't see too often in some programs like Music in the Brain, for example, which is a course that's really a collaboration between folks in the performing arts and one of our colleagues in the science department. In our biology course, it's a survey course, so we do touch upon a lot of topics. This isn't necessarily the full extent of them, but to give you a general idea as to the kind of the sequence of kind of events in biology class. Here are just a number of activities I was able to get pictures for. So one of the culminating projects in the second semester are the eco chambers, where kids are kind of applying what they've learned about open and closed systems, all of the dynamics of ecosystems in general to try to design a closed ecosystem. And certainly there are connections that could be made about, our pursuits of inhabiting Mars or other extraterrestrial places. We also start the year by doing a survey of biological molecules, the molecules necessary for living things. And then this year, actually, we started to also incorporate some biological modeling. So here are some students that were kind of constructing at least segments of a DNA molecule. In chemistry, again, it's an introductory class, and so it's just a little bit of all of these things. It's a bit more math-based, which sometimes could be a source of stress, but I feel like we really kind of take our time and really start planting the seeds of some of that math from day one. So by the time we get to a topic like stoichiometry, we all have a fairly solid foundation to try to mitigate some of those issues or sources of stress that kids sometimes have with kind of the complexity of stoichiometry. Here are some things that we do in our chemistry lab. So our physical and chemical changes lab is one of the things we do really at the beginning of the year. We also like to incorporate design challenges, as you can see in the bottom left-hand corner. And I personally really like when students synthesize substances. So I like to do an activity where they're, writing personal messages around campus, and they're really noting the amount of chalk that was used up. And then they're challenged with kind of creating that amount of calcium carbonate, given, a list of substances they can potentially kind of piece together to make. We also do something called a 2-gram competition lab, which again is more synthesis of a specific type of substance. So they really, hone their lab skills in this class. They, do all the traditional things like use the Bunsen burner and all of those fun things that come along with chemistry. I don't have slides for all of our upper level courses. I just have a few, but our marine ecology class is a real highlight. So they get out and they do some real citizen science that is incorporated in the limpets database. So they do sand crab monitoring a few times over the course of the year. And also in this course, it's kind of has a modified structure. So there are 5 field trips over the course of a semester. So some of their in-class time is replaced with field trips that often happen on the weekends. So somebody taking this class, needs to, really know what they're getting themselves into because there is that weekend expectation. Our environmental science class, which I also teach this class, recently we went to the climate strike down on the Embarcadero. And this course in general is, relatively new, at least new for me. We've had an environmental science course in years past, but we've kind of brought it back because it, kind of disappeared for a few years. So one of the things we really do in this class is not focus on, the doom and gloom, which there is plenty, but really focusing on action and solutions. As far as next year, we're constantly talking about, our scope and sequence, the curriculum at large. So one of the discussions we've been having is about our scope and sequence. I've been here for 14 years. The scope and sequence has always pretty much been the same. Certainly courses come and go. So we're just, we're just talking about whether it's the best sequence. So up in the left-hand corner, you see we got biology, that's our year 1, and then chemistry year 2, and then that's followed by some of our elective courses. What we're considering, it certainly may or may not happen, is changing that a little bit. So we've been considering whether we should have more of an integrated approach, where we're touching upon really all of the sciences that we cover in years 1 and 2. It does a few things for us, so whether or not that comes to fruition or not remains to be seen. But come March, we should have a course catalog. So if any of these sequences are a sticking point, make sure you check out our course catalog when it comes out. Again, probably around March would be a good time to check. And as I mentioned, I'm also the coordinator for our blended learning program. I'm also a teacher in the program. So this program is a collaboration between us and the independent schools that you see here on the screen. And it's a blended program, which means that it's mostly online, asynchronous work, but we mix that in with virtual sessions that happen once every other week at a minimum, and depending on the course would depend on how often. And it is also has a minimum of 3 to 5 face-to-face trips that happen all over the Bay Area. Most of the courses in the blended learning program are semester-long courses. Again, I might refer to these as some boutique courses, but we also have something like multivariable calculus. We've had some language classes that are year-long. But one of the benefits of this program is that it does provide a little bit more flexibility for students with their school day, because they're going to have a blended block in their school day. But whether or not they choose to do their blended work during that time is ultimately up to them. And some people really like that flexibility, and that flexibility, could be too much flexibility for some. But it's a great exercise in really being able to kind of manage, your own time and kind of your own expectations for the course. For my blend ed, so just as an example, I go to three face-to-face trips, 4 trips all together, but 1 trip is in teams of 2. But for my public health class, we go for a neighborhood health assessment of Bayview Hunters Point. I take them over to the shipyard. They hear, about the shutting down of the PG&E plant over near Heron's Head Park. I also take them to Literacy for Environmental Justice, and I take them to Highland Hospital. And just recently, our multivariable calculus course went to the SF MoMA and did some really, kind of innovative math problems there. Maybe not innovative, but I think the approach of going to the museum was an innovative approach. And that's it. I know I didn't answer everybody's question, but there's my email address, and there's the link to the Bay Area Blended Consortium. And I'm sure I have some time for questions.
Awesome.
I'm just gonna stop sharing this for now.
Great. So Don, one of the questions that came up a couple of times is just there are a few other schools that are starting with physics freshman year. So can you talk a little bit about the rationale behind starting with biology and then moving to chemistry, or even how you're starting to think about maybe a different sequencing where you're blending biology and chemistry and then physics? It looked like sophomore year. So what is a little bit of the rationale behind that?
Yeah. So, with regard to the sequence as it is now, I've been here for 14 years. It's always been the same sequence. But our rationale about why it is that sequence is because, partly our mission, a private school with a public purpose. So the concepts of environmental justice is a big portion of what we cover in freshman biology. So it provides a really great environment and discipline to study things that are really big world issues. So certainly global climate change, for example, we look at that through the lens of open and closed systems and through ecology. So for us, it's kind of an essential part of starting their science education in Lick, since that is a theme that carries on from freshman year to senior year. The rationale about potentially changing that is there's lots of reasons to potentially change it. One is that we are looking at climate change. If I just use that as an example, I could choose a number of different examples, but we'll talk about that one. There are obviously aspects of climate change that can be viewed through any lens of science, and it's a multi-level approach to discovering or committing to a solution. So we feel like where we would like students to start looking at those issues through all of the lenses as a way to start, as opposed to just looking at it through a biological lens. The other thing that also happens with the way we have our sequence is that we also have upper level or honors level physics classes. So the way we're structured right now, we have to have bio, we have chemistry, then we have physics, and then to get to honors physics, you have to actually go through, the bottleneck, if you will, right? The physics people wouldn't call it a bottleneck, but somebody teaching marine ecology might call it a bottleneck, because if you want to get to honors physics, you have to not take marine ecology, and you have to go through physics to actually get to honors physics. So changing the initial sequence at the beginning actually gives us a little bit more latitude with how we can kind of present the courses in the upper level, because we might be able to offer, a regular physics and an honors physics like concurrently, where you can opt to go into one or the other without actually going through a bottleneck to kind of get to, this other level. We've also had some changes with, the course offerings here. So there's lots of reasons, but that's just one example.
Awesome. And then one more question, Don. Cynthia was asking if you could talk a little bit more about the chemistry design challenge, like what happens there, and how normal is that or something like that to happen in all of our science classes. So our, you showed a really great display of the varying science classes that are offered. Are most of them kind of more project-based or more test-based? Is the chemistry design challenge kind of an exemplar for what typically happens in classes?
Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously every class is different. I speak from my experience, and I've taught bio and I've taught chemistry, and certainly I know what's going on in the upper level classes. But I think things like design challenges are a great way to kind of build community in a class. So in that particular one that we were looking at was really about buoyancy. And using different materials to create a structure. Certainly it was tied to chemistry, but it was actually even more related to community building than it was about the science of doing it. Certainly there are ones that are very, very specific to the topics that we're covering. But I can say without any doubt that those types of design challenges are something that undoubtedly happen in years 1 and 2. And they do, I don't know if they happen as regularly in upper level classes, but certainly there have been design challenges in physics, like designing a bridge, for example, that can hold the most weight, or designing a structure that would prevent an egg from cracking when you drop it from 2 stories. So they certainly happen. Again, I'm a frosh and soft teacher mostly, so those happen very regularly there. And I do know examples that also happen in the upper levels, but I can't speak about their regularity.
Awesome. Thanks, Don. Really appreciate it. Really love the presentation, and thanks for spending your Sunday with us. Okay. We're going to transition to math here, and we have Stephen here to talk to us about math. Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Hi, my name is Steve Simon. I've been teaching math, believe it or not, since 1975, and I've been teaching math at WIC since 1984. I've taught all of the courses at one time or another. Now I'm actually 80%, so I only teach one class. But I was department chair for 15 years, so I'm very familiar with the program, and I hope I can answer any questions that come up. I am going to share a screen with you. I have a little slideshow to give you an overview of our mathematics program. So I'll start with our mission statement, because I think it's very powerful and says a lot about what we try to do. We know that not everybody has warm feelings about math, and that's something we're trying to change. So we strive to empower students to interact with mathematics so they can experience the power and beauty of the subject. We teach them to approach math as a way of thinking, with a focus on inquiry, sense-making, reasoning, and application. And I'll talk more about that idea of a way of thinking a little later. Students have the opportunity to collaborate, to persist, and to seek multiple approaches, because that's what makes people flexible problem solvers. And that's one of the things about math that generalizes to other endeavors. I always tell students that mathematical thinking is critical thinking. And so you're becoming a problem solver, not just in math. We help students develop a learning mindset by reflecting on mistakes and viewing them as opportunities for growth. You can't learn without making mistakes. You shouldn't think that you can, or shouldn't try to. And we hope that when students get done, that they will know that they can learn any mathematics that they might need in the future to achieve their goals in life. So to drill down on some of the elements of our philosophy there, the first one, and they're all important. So math is not a spectator sport. And what that means is you don't learn math by watching someone do math or listening to someone talk about math for the most part. You learn math by doing math. I often tell kids learning math by listening to a lecture is like trying to get physically fit by watching someone do push-ups. So in our classes, that doesn't mean we don't often need to explain things to our students, but most of the classes, students are actually working on activities that we have created for them. We make very little use of textbooks. We have activities that we've developed over many years that are designed to give the students a chance to experience the mathematics, to make sense of things for themselves, to talk about it, to connect it with the things they already know, and to learn by doing. The notion of a learning mindset starts with the notion that every student can understand math. And that's not something our society widely believes. We have these very toxic beliefs about math in our culture, that it's something only some people can do. We know that isn't true. And there's actually wonderful brain imaging research over the last few years that says that when you struggle with things like math, you actually develop more synapses in your brain. So you actually get smarter. It's just like building up muscles when you exercise. And mistakes are golden. Mistakes are how you fine tune your understanding. And we also I talked in the mission statement about sense making. And sense making is sort of the opposite of memorization. And most people learn math, I think, or think of math as learning all the rules, as if rules are what math is about. And when we talk about sense making, I think for a lot of folks, it's not even clear what we mean by that. So I'll give you a very simple example. And it's tricky when talking about math because to give examples of lessons, for example, requires everybody to know what you're talking about. And people have very, very different amounts of familiarity with math topics beyond arithmetic. But just to give you a very, very simple example, I'm going to annotate something here. So this is a conversation that I had recently in my pre-calculus class, because we're doing something that required them to use fractions in a fluid and flexible way. And most people learn fractions in a very rigid, rule-based way. So for example, if I give a student or one of you the question, if I say, okay, take 5/3, you'll see this up at the top of the screen. If you take 5/3 and now multiply that by 2. Well, what everybody gets taught to do, if you just ask people to do that, almost always the first thing that they do is they turn 2 into 2/1, because there's a rule that says to multiply two fractions together, you multiply the numerators and you multiply the denominators. And that's correct, of course. And most people don't remember a rule for multiplying a whole number by a fraction. And so I pointed that out to my students, and I just checked with them. And of course, most of them did, in fact, do exactly that. And I said, yeah, no, I don't do that. You don't need to do that. I said, let's just interpret the symbols. So one of the things we focus on a lot is interpreting the symbols, right? Using the language of math, not just algebra, but even arithmetic. So I said to my class, I said, so, okay, everybody, what's 2 times $5? And they all, of course, looked at me funny, like, that's a silly question, $10. I said, what's 2 times 5 cars? And they said, 5 cars, 10 cars, rather, excuse me. I said, okay, what's 2 times 5/3? Oh, 10/3, right? You're just counting. And I actually had one of my students go like this, because he never thought of it that way. So we're taking, so that's a simple idea of what we mean by sense making rather than memorization. If you interpret the symbols, then you don't need to memorize a lot of rules. And that brings me very much to the next point, which is specific skills. So when we talk about what does it look like when you do math in this way? What are the things that people like? I was one of those kids in school, and the stuff they showed me just seemed to make sense to me. And so I got interested in teaching math when I realized that there were a lot of smart people for whom that wasn't true. And there are very specific ways in which people think when they're doing math in a fluid and sense-making way, and they can be taught. They're not just intangibles. And so we actually have a list of things we call them mathematical thinking practices, like interpreting the symbols and using multiple perspectives, and strategic thinking is another one. And we actually explain what those things are, and we demonstrate them. They're part of our curriculum. It's not just learning specific math concepts, but also learning how to think mathematically. Another really big part of our philosophy is the notion of mastery over time. So very traditionally, math is taught in a very sort of atomized way. You learn a skill, you practice a skill, you show that you can do that skill. And students come to expect that they'll be assessed on each unit before they start the next one. So it keeps things very siloed. Whereas that's not really mastery. That's really just mimicry. And so real mastery, we know, grows over time. And so we have in all of our classes, and different teachers express this in different ways, but we all give kids a chance to develop and grow their mastery over time and get credit for that. So that the idea is that if one student happens to develop mastery of a certain concept in a week, and another student takes a month, but at the end of that month, they can also demonstrate mastery. There's no reason to think that that first student has been more successful than that second student. That we know that kids learn, people learn in a variety of ways. We have a tremendous variation in students' learning styles. And so we honor persistence and mastery over time rather than speed, because real mathematics is not about speed. And so that's a really important point in our program that I'm particularly proud of, actually. Collaborative learning is another part of our philosophy. Kids work, and this is no longer, when we started doing it, it was a big deal. Now I think it's very common for kids to work in teams when they learn math, so they can talk to each other, so they can bounce ideas off of each other, so they can practice using the vocabulary. And also it eases some of the stress, some of the anxiety that kids feel about math, to be able to work collaboratively. So that's another thing that all of our math classes do. So now folks are always interested in the course sequence, and it's a fairly traditional course sequence, but you shouldn't be fooled by that. The content is not very traditional. And what I mean by that is if you take any of our courses and you pick up a traditional textbook and look at what's in it, you'll see that what we're doing in general is teaching fewer topics more deeply and focusing on the things that do cultivate mathematical thinking. Because once you learn to think that way, if there's a skill or a concept you haven't run across, it's very easy to learn. Oops, I keep changing my screen inadvertently. Sorry about that. Here we go. So this is our course sequence. We teach Algebra 1. Most of our students come to us not needing to take Algebra 1. And I'll talk a moment about placement. But so about maybe 20% of our freshmen take Algebra 1. The vast majority of our students start in one of the two geometry courses. The deductive geometry course is a more abstract course. It's more like the one that people my age took. And a lot of research since then has shown that for most kids, a less formal approach to geometry is more beneficial. And so the inductive geometry is a more informal approach that serves most students very well. And again, we use our placement structures to identify kids who are sufficiently developed in their mathematical thinking that they're ready to benefit from the deductive geometry, which, as I say, is sort of more formal. And again, we have Algebra 2 and Algebra 2 accelerated. So there is a certain amount of tracking. There's no basic track, but there is a sort of accelerated or honors track. And the most important thing to understand about that is the fluidity of it. So every year, kids move. So kids can go from inductive geometry, which is sort of the regular geometry. And if they do really well and they seem to really enjoy math, they can move into the accelerated Algebra 2. And sometimes kids get placed in deductive geometry, and it turns out that the pace or the formalism doesn't suit them as well as we thought it might. Then they might go to the regular Algebra 2 class. And then at each level, those opportunities exist again. So folks go from Algebra 2 typically to pre-calculus, although we have a 3-year requirement. So a student who starts in Algebra 2 starts in Algebra 1 can take Algebra 1 geometry and Algebra 2. And then they may not choose to take pre-calculus. They might go on and take the applied math or the statistics. Most students do go on and as they say, most students start in geometry, they go to Algebra 2, they take one of the pre-calculus courses. And then again, they might choose, sorry about that, as I handle my mouse, it's moving my pages. And then once again, they might choose to go on to take calculus. And actually, the vast majority of our students do wind up taking one of the 2 calculus courses, which is something we're also very proud of, that we've made calculus accessible to all kids, really, or to nearly all kids. So that's our program. Let me say a little bit about placement because I know folks are always very interested in that. Our basic goal is we want all the students to be challenged. We don't want anybody to just breeze through effortlessly. It means we're not doing our job. But we also want all students to feel that they have a path to success, that what we're asking them to do is manageable and that they can be successful and feel good about it. We do give a placement test in late April or early May. It's not just multiple choice. It's the sort of thing where we actually see student work. We can look at their thinking and their reasoning. We pay a great deal of attention to their middle school grades and their teacher recommendations. And we do look at standardized test scores, although that's probably the least useful predictor. And it's important to know that there is no inherent limit to what level students can place into. So if a student has been accelerated in their previous school, and for example, they can demonstrate, say they took geometry as an 8th grader, then we will offer them a geometry placement test. And if they show that they know enough geometry, then they can start in Algebra 2 as a freshman. We even have some rare cases where students have started in pre-calculus. We try to discourage that. It's better for kids, I think, to be with their social group. But if that's the right fit, that's what we do. Okay, so if you have more questions beyond today, the person to contact is Annie Michalczyk. She's our department chair. And this is her contact information. And of course, you can also find that on the Lick website. Let's see, I confess I have not been paying close attention to the time. Devin, do I have time to do to show an example of a project, for example, or would you like me to go to questions?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do the project.
Okay, so I asked my department for some projects to share, and so this is one, and it's tricky because there are a lot of great ones that many people in the audience wouldn't have the background knowledge to know what it was about. But this is a very, very simple one, but it's not simple. There's a wonderful expression. They talk about a low floor and a high ceiling. So we like activities where you don't have to have sophisticated knowledge to understand the question, but there's all sorts of levels you can take it to. So this is a very simple question. It's done in freshman inductive geometry. So this is one that a lot of Lick students will experience. And there's a pattern here, figure 1, figure 2, figure 3. And students are prompted to try to think about the way the pattern grows. And there are probably some of the students who are watching who've done this in 7th or 8th grade. It's the sort of thing that lends itself to many different levels. It's fascinating because when you look at it and you sort of say to yourself, so what are we doing to each figure to get the next figure? And you're going to see it in one way and think that's the way. And then you talk to 2 other people and you find out they see it in a completely different way. So it's a great sort of perspective changer. And then we have some follow-up questions. So first kids talk about how it changes. And then they think about, well, okay, could I draw figures 5 and 6? Could I do that without drawing figure 4 first? Can I generalize? Can I extend the pattern? And then we get to things like describe figure 100. Notice we say describe it because it would be ridiculous to try to draw it, but we can kind of talk about what it would look like. And then finally, we can think about actually making a formula. And the formula would have to do with how many little squares there are in each figure. So can you find a formula that will let you predict and say, okay, how many little squares will there be in the 100th figure or in general in the nth figure? And in this particular class, students did this in teams and then actually put together a presentation. And I think they created a slideshow to share their thinking and their ideas. And that was how they submitted this project in deductive geometry, or excuse me, in inductive geometry. So that's the meat of my presentation. I think I have time for questions. I'm sorry, I can't see the clock on my screen right now, so I don't know how far I am into my 15 minutes. Davian, are there questions for me?
Yeah, let's see. Can you talk a little bit about some of the math supports that you offer students? in its kind of varying forms. That's a couple of questions that I see here. Just how do you help support students who may need a little bit of help in math?
Great, thank you. I'm happy to. So first of all, teachers at Lick typically teach 4 classes, and we have an 8-block schedule. So we have free periods, and often we share a free period with a student and can meet with them then, and we always invite them to do that. We also have a tutorial period almost every day, either before or after lunch, depending on what grade students are in. And we encourage students to come and drop in or make appointments to meet with teachers. And a great deal of individual instruction or remediation happens there. And we also have something called Math Cafe, which is, there's a classroom that we set up during lunch, during tutorial and lunch. So it's about an 1.5-hour period in the middle of the day. And there's always at least one math teacher in there. And so students can just drop in, and that's a place where you can sit and do math, so that if you have a question, there's someone right there who can answer it for you, or you can come in and ask whatever teacher is there, whatever question you're stuck on. Or often kids will come in teams and just use that as a place to work together on their math. But again, where there's also support. But we're all very much committed to being available for students who need a little individual support or extra explanation or whatever it is that will help them be successful.
Great. And Steve, you've been at Lick for a while. And so can you just talk a little bit about how do you see math at Lick as being innovative, maybe in comparison to a different kind of math education that you might get elsewhere?
Sure. Let me answer. I was just looking at the questions. We're actually 4 times per 8-day rotation, not twice. So we're alternate days. So math class meets for 70 minutes every other day.
Correct.
As far as what's innovative, we were, in terms of teaching math, not just by talking about it, by making it student-centered, by making it active, by creating curriculum in which students are guided to make sense of things instead of being told how I make sense of things. We started doing that almost 30 years ago, and very few schools were doing it then. And we've really built on that. So I think in terms of innovation, we write almost all of our own curriculum. I think I mentioned that before. And so what we've chosen to do is focus on the topics that kids can really make sense of. So often what you see are certain traditional topics that are part of an Algebra 2 curriculum. They'll be in the formal list of topics for the state standards, whatever it may be. And you see when you teach them that kids just resort to memorizing the rules because they haven't internalized the preceding topics enough to be able to do this more advanced topic on a sense-making level. And so when we see that, we just say, okay, we're not going to teach that yet. And so we teach some things in pre-calculus that are traditionally taught in Algebra 2 because we saw, and I saw, that kids in Algebra 2 weren't ready for it. It was too soon. You were laying the foundation and then doing something very sophisticated built on that foundation right away. And people don't learn like that. And so that choice of what's meaningful to teach, what are the topics that kids really engage with in a way that fosters mathematical thinking, those are the things we drill down deeply on. And with the knowledge that if there are many sort of traditional techniques or rules that would be in a course, but that we don't have time to get to because of the depth that we go to on the other subjects, it's not a problem because the kids who've learned to think mathematically, when they need those things, they'll pick them up like that.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Steve. I really appreciate your time this morning. And again, if you have more questions, you can see the contact information for Annie on the screen there. All right, so now we will transition to having our student panel. So if our student panelists, if you could turn your cameras on for us. And we'll do a quick round of introductions. And so if you can let us know your name, what pronouns you use, what middle school you went to, and one of your favorite things that, like, it could be a class, it could be a teacher, or you can share a little bit about like what different kind of groups or sports that you're involved in. Callie, can you start us off?
Sure. I'm Callie Hendrickson. I'm a senior. I go by she, her pronouns. I went to Berks, and one of my favorite things I'm a part of at Lick is the lacrosse team. And I'll pass it on to Justin.
Hi, I'm Justin Yip. I'm a junior. I use he, him, his pronouns. I went to Crocker Middle School, and one of my favorite things is the math department because there's so many things, as you guys heard. And I'll pass it on to Sophia.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sophia Gana-Torres. My pronouns are she, her, and I attended St. Paul's Catholic School in Noe Valley. I think something that I really enjoy is definitely my Spanish for Heritage Speakers 2 honors class. The literature and writing, exploring my culture and everything, just overall really exciting.
Hello, I'm Ronan. I'm a senior. I use he, him pronouns, and I am from Prospects here in the East Bay. And something I'm excited about right now is I'm the lighting designer for our fall play. And next up is Zoe.
Hello, everyone. My name is Zoe. I'm a senior. I use she, her pronouns. And for middle school, I went to Marin Country Day School. And some of my favorite things I'm a part of at Lick is the water polo team and also the architecture program.
Awesome. So for everyone who's in attendance, if you want, just as we did with the teachers, feel free to pitch your questions for our students in the Q&A. But I will start off with the question for you all. And why did you want to come to Lick? Or what was like one of the deciding factors for you in deciding to come to high school here?
I'll start us off again. So I had an older sister that went to Lick, and I just throughout, like when she was in high school, she was three grades above me, so she was a senior when it was my freshman year. But every time I came to Lick for her like music performances or sports games or anything, everyone was so friendly and like helping me show where the bathroom is or all this different stuff. Like her friends or people I just didn't even know were just so willing to help me figure out where I was going or what I needed. And I just really liked that.
Yeah, I think I can follow that. For me, it was definitely just when I visited campus for the first time, coming from a very homogeneous middle school, it felt like I was kind of in the same cycle of I'd see the same people, I'd see the same cultures and kind of values being perpetuated. So when I came to Lick, it was kind of like almost like a rude awakening because I saw so many different people, so much of a more diverse community than I was used to. And I think that really resonated with me because I really enjoyed that and I really valued that. And that's probably one of the main reasons why I came to Lick.
Alrighty, so I wanted to attend Lick because of their academics. While it is true that it is a very rigorous program, Lick really provides all the necessary tools and support that you need for excelling. I also really value that it is like really well-rounded and how it incorporates students' creativity, hard work, and teamwork to kind of give back to the community. Also, the architecture program really interested me when looking at Lick.
My attention was first like really excited about Lick when I heard about the shops. A person in the grade above was applying to Lick when I was in 7th grade, and like he was describing the shops and it sounded like a dream. And then I toured Lick and the shops were even cooler than I thought they would be. But then now that I'm at Lick, while I love the shops a ton, I'm super happy to have them. I think like what Callie said, the community is so awesome, and like getting to like just be able to talk to anyone and feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, like let's see. When I shadowed, when I was in 8th grade, like my shadow host was like super welcoming, super kind, and everyone was like coming up to me saying hi, like how I was doing, all that. So yeah, the community, like everyone's friendliness was just super present from the beginning. And then also, like people have touched on, there's just so many opportunities here, like the architecture, the shops, all the art classes you can take, which, yeah, really interested me.
Awesome, cool. So today, the folks that are on here with us, they heard about BME, they heard about science, and they heard about math. And one of the questions that came up a couple times was, what does, mentorship look like with teachers? And I think, and someone else just asked us now, and I think it's a really great question to ask of you all. Like, what is your relationship like with your teachers? What's the student-teacher relationship like at the school? We can just have a couple folks answer that.
It's been really, really awesome. I'm really into visual arts. I do a lot of photography and filmmaking. And I remember freshman year, like just going up to the film teacher. I'd never met him before, but like we talked a lot and he helped me a lot with my work, and he helped me like get access to tools and stuff and learn how to use the tools, all without me actually taking a class from him. So I was able to just walk in with him. And now that I'm taking photography, it's been awesome, like just being able to use the darkroom after class. But then Mr. Sanborn, who's the awesome photo teacher, like he'll come in, even though it's like his prep block, and he'll help me out with stuff, and I can like just chat with him about cameras. And then similar to that, like doing lighting for the play, like I've been able to stay really late, just like working on the lights and like learning a ton about how the entire theater works with Miss Boyd. So it's been a really great mentorship.
For me, I started in Spanish, just in Spanish 1, and then sophomore year, I decided to move to Spanish 2 Accelerated, and I really started to struggle with the pace of the class moving faster, and I started talking to my teacher one day, and I was pretty stressed, and I was like, oh no, like, do I need to get a Spanish tutor? And she was like, whoa, like, no, first you're gonna come meet with me, we're gonna go to Spanish Cafe, we're gonna do our homework together, all this stuff, and so I started going to that, and it started to really help. And then I started meeting with her before we had tests, just to work on studying and projects and stuff, going over essays, practicing speeches in front of her. And it just really developed our relationship and made me a lot more comfortable in Spanish. And now she was just on maternity leave, and so she's been sending me a bunch of pictures of her baby and stuff. And so I feel like our relationship really went outside of the classroom after that, which was nice.
Yeah, I'd say that every teacher that I've had at Lick, like you can feel that they really just want you to succeed. Like they want just the absolute best for you. Especially with like within the history department, I feel like I've had some really good relationships with my teachers. Like if you just stay after class, I've like had like hour-long conversations about just like politics, just like with your teacher. And then like you kind of like both get to learn in that way.
Great. Justin and Sophia, both of you were coming from schools very different than the Lick experience. And so can you talk a little bit about your background? So your middle school, what was that like? And then what was the transition coming to Lick like? And how are you supported in order to be so successful?
Okay, yeah. So fortunately, I came from a middle school that also had like a very rigorous academic program. So in terms of workload, I believe I was pretty prepared for Lick. I do admit that math was a little difficult for me initially, but Lick provided Math Cafe, peer mentors, and other support systems where I was tutored on the subject. So I definitely felt like I was able to do well there. I wasn't like stressed at all. I would also like to add that the classroom environments are more interactive rather than just lectures, because like the students are encouraged to ask questions and to lead discussions. In my middle school, it was more of just lectures, and it was a lot more difficult for me to engage. However, at Lick, the teachers really strive to teach in ways that are kind of more beneficial to the students. For me personally, the hands-on portion where we get to like work physically with the material as well as working in groups has been like a big change from my middle school experience. I would say that we are definitely leaned into discomfort, but we are encouraged this in a very supportive and respectful class environment, and I really appreciate that. Also, I was the only person coming from a middle school, and so I had worries about connecting with new people and making friends, especially since last year, a lot of it was virtual. However, through advisory, peer connect, my cross country team, clubs, etc., I was really able to make close connections. And so I would say just advocating for yourself and overall being curious really helped me with the transition, and Lick, of course, as well.
Yeah, I think for me, I came from Crocker Middle School. And for those that don't know what that is, it's in Hillsborough, California, which is a very affluent and kind of homogeneous neighborhood. And for me, coming from Hillsborough, it was like at the time, it was the right middle school for me because I was still developing. I still like had a lot of my friends and I saw a lot of people that look like me, but I didn't really have the perspective that I now do because now I've been introduced to so many more people. I think just different looking people. And I know like that sounds kind of like strange, but it truly was a very similar experience in middle school. But I think one of the best things that's helped me would be the teacher and the faculty and staff. I think everyone at Lick is so welcoming that I think on day one of deductive geometry, which I took, Miss Torres, my math teacher, was just like outstandingly happy and just cheerful to see me. And it was like one of the best things because I historically had a bad relationship with my math teachers, right? I've always loved math, but the way I learned was very different from the way they taught math, which was very lecture-based style. So I think, especially with the collaborative-based learning, that had really helped me kind of transition in high school and kind of gave it like a sense like, oh, Lick is a little bit different than everything that I've been used to.
Cool. Could y'all talk a little bit about what the social scene is like at Lick? Like, where do you kick it? What are y'all doing after school? How do you have fun with one another?
I guess I can start again. I think for me, and I think a lot of people also have this problem, is I live on the peninsula. So I don't live in the city. I don't live like nearby Lick. So it's very hard for me to kind of go over to a friend's house like I might have been able to in middle school. But I do think that Lick provides a lot of opportunities for kids to kind of like get together after school. So there's a play coming up this week, Thursday and Friday, which people can stay after for school. Or there's various home games that me and my friends might just go to, like a home tennis game or a home volleyball game and just watch for a bit. But I think despite being a school where I think a lot of people call it a commuter school, where people come from all over the area to kind of come to this one school and then go back home, I think Lick also makes a lot of opportunities for people to stay and kind of enjoy the campus life and kind of enjoy the social scene, which is, it's strange, but it's also kind of cool. So I'm not gonna lie.
Kind of coming on the other end of that, I live in the East Bay, and it was really nice to be able to like have an excuse to take public transit more, so I didn't have to like get driven around by my parents, and that was like a really great way for me to like be able to like explore ways of getting around on my own and like take public transit a lot more. So I would take BART and then Muni in to different places in the city on the weekends, and then like Justin said, staying after school at Lick is really easy. Like on Friday I was there until like 8 or something, so probably too late, but you can stay late and campus is open. I remember freshman year, like people would just be staying there for so long, like hanging out in all the breakout rooms and stuff. Yeah.
Cool. Can you talk a bit about homework and how you try to balance your homework load along with the different extracurricular activities that you're involved in?
So for me, because of the block schedule, you have class every other day. And so at Lick, they try to teach you to do your homework the day it's assigned. And so I always try to do that because then on Thursdays you have no homework, which is really nice. So it's kind of like an early weekend in my opinion. And I've always been the type of person where I am much better at getting my stuff done when I have a lot more going on. And so right now I'm playing field hockey, and so I don't get home till about 6. And so I'll have like 3 or 4 classes of homework to do that night. And they kind of say that freshman and sophomore year, it's like 45 minutes of homework per night, per class. And then junior and senior year, it's more like an hour. But I feel like, I don't know, it's different things. Like reading sometimes takes me a little longer, but I never feel like I'm overwhelmed with the homework. And it's always nice because then on those Thursday nights where I don't have anything due that Friday, or on the weekends, I can catch up or spend a little bit more time studying or working on an essay. So I kind of just use my extra time to do that.
Also now as a senior or like sophomore year, I think you can, even freshman year, you can have like a free period where like you don't take an elective. And that has been extremely helpful, especially this year. I have 2 free periods right now. And so like each day I just have like an hour and 10 minutes to just like work, like just focus. And it's definitely a struggle, well, not a struggle, but it's a challenge to do sports and also do all your homework, but like it's definitely possible. And like also have a social life. It is doable.
One of the things that folks have noticed about the school is that it doesn't seem or doesn't feel like there's a lot of, it doesn't seem like highly competitive between you all from an academic sense, right? So it's a highly academic environment, but you seem to get along really well. It doesn't seem to be a highly competitive environment. Why do you think that is? What do you think kind of contributes to you all helping lift each other up in the face of such challenging academics?
What comes to mind for me is that all of our classes at Lick, you're sitting in a group. So you'll be sitting with like 2 or 3 like people, and you're never at a single desk alone. And so I kind of always think like, oh, if I'm working on homework or a test or something, like a lot of my knowledge has like come from my conversations with my group mates. So I'm kind of like, oh, it's kind of like our win if I do well. Or if my classmate does well, I'm kind of like, oh, maybe like I help them out a little bit and I'm like happy for them. So I think it's just the idea of group work. And I feel like a lot of assessments and like projects are also with a group. So it's never just like, oh, how well I did versus the other person. It's how we did together and how like bouncing off our ideas made us think deeper.
Yeah, I think building off of that, just talking with a lot of my peers, my friends, everyone has such a different idea of what they want to do with their life, right? I feel like from a more traditional private institution, it'd be everyone wants to go to college, everyone wants to like do that very linear path. Whereas at Lick, I've got friends who want to go into the songwriting business. I've got friends who want to go into the movie directing business. And I think that diversity and interest really kind of tones down whatever competitiveness or like uber competitiveness that kind of is associated with private institutions like Lick. Because I think when you're not competing for that same spot on that college like application, on that like campus, there's a lot more room for you to collaborate, like Callie said, and kind of relax almost.
And from the college counseling department's perspective, they stress all the time, like you're not fighting against each other to get into these schools. Like even if you are applying to the same school, like share information, share resources, and all the college counselors, they talk and they share information to make sure that we can all benefit from each other. And I think it makes like kind of a supportive environment when we're applying to college.
Great. So you all are coming from vastly different backgrounds. And I think that's very indicative of the student body at Lick. What have you found, or have you found Lick, or what has Lick done to create this inclusive environment that is accepting of your differences and is accepting of the different perspectives that you're bringing to the community?
Once again, group work, I would say we're often put into groups where we have different levels of expertise or just different opinions or values also, which comes to play because of geography, because a lot of the students do come from different areas. And so they do have those different points of views. And so we, when in groups, we're kind of exposed to like different ideas, and we're kind of encouraged to explore that and to really engage in that. Let's see. I don't know, does anyone want to add on?
Yeah, I can add on a bit. I think just we've gone back to it so many times, but the community and the support you have, it's always a collaborative. How can we succeed, right? How can my group and I succeed? How can the class move forward? I think that mentality that everyone's kind of a team, and I think Coach Smith, our athletics director, really reiterates this. But the idea that you succeed when everyone else in your group succeeds. And I think that's kind of something that's hammered down because I think I saw something in the Q&A thing about group tests. And yeah, in math, we do sometimes have group quizzes and stuff where it's like you're really working with your team to achieve that grade. And usually the grade's not the end point. It's just what you learn along the way. So I think going back to the question, which was, if I'm not mistaken, how does it create like a environment where everyone feels included? Is that right, Davian? Yeah, I think it's the culture of Lick that's very different from anywhere else.
And the teaching culture also adds on to that. I think like in every single class I've taken, there's been some sort of like idea of different perspectives from like math, where it's like explicitly stated, to like history, talking about all the different angles of events and all the different like any like factors that play into it. Like brain and behavior also like that. Even my like music class also had different musical perspectives. I think it's like part of the way that they teach, it kind of like trickles down into us, into the way that we think.
Great. So one of the things that I think is missing in the application process, kind of in general this year, is that students are able to come on shuttle visits. And so given that, what is something you would like the audience to know about Lick that they may not be able to experience unless they were on campus?
I got one. The lunches. The lunches are so good. Like I think last week we had I think it was chile verde pork, and it was just like with the tortilla chips. It was ridiculously good. And I think when I shadowed here for my first time, my shadow mentor was generous enough to let me use his card to get a hot lunch. And it pretty much sold me on Lick because the lunches here are so heads and like tails above everything else I've had like, in middle school.
I also have to add that for those that are vegetarians or vegans, like there are options for you. So I really appreciate that. Once again, lunches at Lick, amazing.
I always think about TGIF. Thank God it's Friday and that happens. I think it's maybe once a month or once a quarter on Friday. And so it's tutorial and lunch are together. And they always, like our last one we had, they had like tons of Krispy Kreme donuts, and like everyone was crowded in the courtyard trying to get in line to get a donut. And sometimes they'll have like a bouncy house or like a churro stand or like Otter Pops. I don't know. It's just like so fun. And whenever I talk about it, my parents are always like, that's school? Like what? And I'm always like, yeah, that was like so fun when I come home on Fridays. And it's just a nice thing to look forward to also. And it's fun because it's always like all 4 grades are there. And so it's a lot of like community time that I like.
Great. So last question for you all, and feel free to take time if you need it. What 3 words would you use to describe Lick-Wilmerding High School? One of your words can be a hyphenated word, but that hyphenated word can only have 1 word on each side of the hyphen. So if you want to say like, I don't know, like heartwarming, that can be 1 word. And everyone has to answer.
I guess I can start again. My 3 words would be inclusive, collaborative, and kind of funky. Because it's so different from what I'm used to, and that's just me being on the peninsula, but maybe not.
Okay. Human, fun, engaging.
Okay, I'll go with encouraging, compassionate, and I'm steal Justin's word and say funky again.
I would say inclusive, exciting, and diverse.
Callie?
Say, Ronan stole my word, but engaging, opportunities, and fun.
Awesome. Well, thanks to the five of you for jumping on this Sunday morning and sharing your experiences about Lick. Everyone who's still on with us as attendees, we really appreciate your time and your effort and all the questions you ask. I know we weren't able to get to all of them, but please feel free to come to our office hours, come to our virtual student tours, or connect with utilize our Connect with the Tiger Ambassador program so you can get those questions answered one-on-one with some of our students here or some of our parents. We look forward to getting to know you and the rest of your family throughout the application process. And yeah, we'll see you soon. Have a great rest of your weekend.